At 3:07 in the morning, the baby monitor crackled with static, and Maeve O'Connor jolted awake on the narrow fold-out bed beside the playroom. Her heart hammered in her chest, still caught between sleep and panic, and for a single confused second, she did not remember where she was. Then Noah's cry cut through the darkness. Sharp, afraid, the kind of sound that said he was not just awake, he was trapped in something his 2-year-old mind could not escape. Maeve threw off the thin blanket and moved fast. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold marble floor. 6 weeks working in Luca Moretti's mansion, and she still had not learned how to live with the silence in this place. It was a silence so thick it felt poured into the air, heavy and suffocating, like velvet curtains pulled tight over the very last thread of moonlight. She pushed open the playroom door, and there he was. Noah, standing in his crib, his small face red and wet with tears, his whole body shaking. "Shish, sweetheart," Maeve whispered, lifting him into her arms. He clung to her neck so tight she could barely breathe, but she did not pull away. She only held him closer, feeling his little heart racing against her chest like a trapped bird. Maeve carried him to the rocking chair in the corner, the one positioned beneath the window where pale moonlight slipped through the gap in the curtains. She settled into the chair, adjusted Noah against her shoulder, and began to rock. Slow, steady, the way her mother had once rocked her when nightmares came. Then she began to sing. Old Irish lullabies, the kind her mother had taught her when Maeve was small, before the world took everything away. Her voice was soft, barely more than a whisper, dissolving into the hushed stillness of the night. She sang about green hills and quiet streams, about safety and home and love that never left. Maeve did not know about the microphone. She did not know that hidden inside the wooden toy chest across the room, beneath layers of stuffed animals and building blocks, a tiny recording device had been installed on the very first day she was hired. She did not know that in an office on the other side of the mansion, Luca Moretti sat in the dark, surrounded by glowing screens and the scent of whiskey, listening to every word she sang. 6 weeks. He had been listening for 6 weeks. Listening to her soothe his son in a language that reminded him of his own childhood. Listening to her speak to Noah as if the boy were the center of the universe. Listening to her move through the darkness like a ghost he could not touch, could not reach, could not stop thinking about. And tonight, something in Maeve's voice, maybe the faint fracture of loneliness underneath the melody, finally cracked the ice Luca had wrapped around his heart for so long. Maeve did not know that everything was about to change. That when she laid Noah back in the crib and turned around, her life would never be the same again. If you want to know what happens next between this poor nanny and this cold mafia boss, please tap like to support the channel. And if you have not subscribed yet, subscribe now so you do not miss what comes next. Maeve finished the lullaby and felt Noah's breathing slow, felt his small body grow heavy with sleep. She stood carefully, moving toward the crib with the gentlest steps she could manage, and laid him down on the soft mattress. For a moment, she just stood there, watching him sleep, watching his tiny chest rise and fall, and she felt something in her own chest tighten. She was 26 years old, and she had nothing. No family, no home, an eviction notice waiting in her old apartment across town, and $64,000 in medical debt that followed her like a shadow she could not escape. But here, in this moment, with this child sleeping peacefully because of her, she felt like she mattered. Like she was not invisible anymore. Maeve turned to leave, and her heart stopped. A shadow stood in the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly still. Watching her, she had seen Luca Moretti only a handful of times in the 6 weeks she had worked here. A glimpse in the hallway, the back of him vanishing behind a door, but never this close, never this clear, never in the middle of the night like this. He stepped forward, and the dim glow from the nightlight reached his face. Sharp jaw, dark stubble, black eyes so deep they looked like they could swallow the world. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no jacket, no tie, even though it was past 3 in the morning. Everything about him said control, power, danger. "Mr. Moretti," Maeve whispered, her voice trembling. "I did not know you were here. Noah was crying, and I just—" That song. He cut her off, his voice low, like distant thunder. "Where did you learn it?" Maeve blinked, thrown by the question. "My mother," she swallowed hard. "She taught me when I was little. Irish lullabies. She used to sing them to me every night." Something flickered across Luca's face. Too fast for Maeve to name, but she could have sworn it was pain. He said nothing. He only stood there, and the silence stretched on until it felt suffocating. Then his gaze shifted, slowly, as if every inch cost him something, toward the crib where Noah lay sleeping. Maeve watched Luca's jaw tighten, watched his hands curl into fists at his sides, then loosen again. He looked at his son the way a man looks at a ghost. Like that innocent 2-year-old child carried someone else's curse. Maeve did not know what drove her to speak. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the instinct to protect the child she had cared for every day for 6 weeks. Or maybe she was simply too tired to be afraid. "He looks like you," Maeve said, soft but steady. Same dark eyes. Same stubborn expression when he does not want to sleep. Luca turned back to her, and this time his stare was sharp as a razor. Maeve felt her heart stumble, waiting for anger, waiting to be dismissed on the spot, waiting to be thrown out of this house and back into the cold reality she had been running from. But instead of fury, Luca only watched her for a long time, as if he were trying to read every thought in her mind. Then he looked at Noah again, and Maeve saw something she had not expected. Longing. A deep, desperate need to touch, to come closer, and yet something stronger than a wall of steel held him back. 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, Luca said suddenly, his tone turning cold again. "My office. Come alone." Maeve opened her mouth to ask why, but he had already turned away. His footsteps made no sound on the polished stone floor, and the darkness swallowed him back into the hallway. She stood there alone with a sleeping child and a heart beating wildly, trying to understand what had just happened. Before he disappeared completely, his voice drifted back, so faint she nearly thought she had imagined it. "Thank you for taking care of him." Then he was gone, and Maeve was left wide-eyed with the realization that for the first time in 6 weeks, Luca Moretti had said thank you. For the first time, he had looked at her like she was real. And for the first time, she had seen something beneath the ice. Something broken. Something waiting. Maeve could not sleep. She lay on the fold-out bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning in circles around those deep black eyes and that rough, quiet voice that still echoed in her ears. 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. My office. She did not understand why her hands still trembled when she replayed the moment he had said thank you. Just 2 words. Yet coming from Luca Moretti, they carried the weight of something much bigger. She turned onto her side and pulled the blanket up to her chest. The memories came rushing in like a tide she could not hold back. 3 years ago, Maeve had been sitting beside a hospital bed, holding her mother's thin, fragile hand, listening as the heart monitor slowed. Slower, slower, until it became one long, unbroken line. Heart failure. 3 years of fighting, 3 years of hospital visits, 3 years of hope and then despair. And in the end, her mother was gone, leaving Maeve alone in this world with a mountain of debt and a hollowed-out heart. Her father had left when Maeve was 9. Disappeared on a cold November morning without a single goodbye, without turning back even once. She could not clearly remember his face anymore. She only remembered the feeling of being abandoned, the feeling of not being good enough to be worth staying for. After her mother died, Maeve had worked every job she could find. Waitressing at cheap diners, cleaning houses for wealthy families who looked straight through her as if she did not exist, caring for the elderly in nursing homes, changing diapers and spooning soup into mouths that could no longer remember their own names. Every job was the same in one way. Maeve was always invisible. She lived in the shadow of other people's lives, doing what no one wanted to do, and vanishing without anyone noticing she had ever been there. Then 6 weeks ago, the agency called with an offer so strange she thought it had to be a mistake. A nanny position for a wealthy family in Sudbury, pay 4 times higher than normal, room and board included. And all she had to do was sign a confidentiality agreement as long as a novel and never ask questions about the family's business. Maeve knew something was wrong. Money like that never came without a price. But when she looked at the eviction notice on her kitchen table and the debt collectors calling 3 times a day, she had no choice left. She put pen to paper without asking one more question, and she stepped into the Moretti estate as if stepping into another world entirely. The pale gray light of dawn slipped through the gap in the curtains. Maeve realized she had been awake all night. A soft knock sounded at the door, and Rosa walked in, carrying a tray with tea and toast. Rosa DeLuca, the 67-year-old housekeeper with knowing gray eyes and silver hair pinned neatly at the back of her head, was the only person in this house who treated Maeve like a human being instead of a shadow. She set the tray down, then studied Maeve with a searching look. "You did not sleep," Rosa said. It was not a question. Maeve started to deny it, but the dark circles beneath her eyes spoke for her. "The boss went into the playroom last night," Rosa went on, her voice dropping lower. "First time in over a year." Maeve stayed silent, not knowing what to say. Rosa sat down on the edge of the bed, her expression grave. "Listen to me, child. Luca Moretti is not a bad man. I raised him after his mother died when he was 10. I know he has a heart, even if he keeps it buried so deep no one can see it." She paused, holding Maeve's gaze. "But his world is dangerous. And people who step into that world do not always walk out whole." Maeve felt a chill run down her spine. "Be careful," Rosa said, reaching out to touch Maeve's hand. "Do not let him see you. Not really. Not if you still want to keep your heart." But Maeve knew it was already too late. He had seen her last night. And she was no longer sure she wanted to be invisible again. At exactly 6 o'clock in the morning, Maeve stood outside the massive oak door to Luca's office. Her heart pounded so hard she was afraid he might hear it through the wood. 2 men stood guard outside, tall and silent, watching her with expressions she could not read. One of them nodded and pushed the door open. Maeve stepped inside, and her breath caught. The room was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over gardens that stretched as far as she could see, the morning sun pouring in and laying down bands of gold across the polished wood floor. Bookshelves rose all the way to the ceiling, packed with leather-bound volumes. A massive black desk dominated the space, so large it looked like it belonged in a palace, not a home. Luca stood when she entered, and the courtesy startled her so much she nearly stopped walking. He wore a dark suit today, perfectly tailored, and he looked every inch the powerful man Rosa had warned her about. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the leather chair across from the desk. Maeve sat, folding her hands in her lap, feeling like a child called to the principal's office. Silence filled the room. Luca looked at her, then looked away, then looked back, as if weighing every word before he spoke. "You have worked here for 6 weeks," he said at last. "But I have never asked where you come from." Maeve swallowed. "Sudbury. Born and raised. Family?" The question cut like a blade into a wound that had never fully closed. Maeve hesitated, but Luca's eyes held no judgment, no cruel curiosity. Only a simple need to know. And for some reason, she found she could not lie to him. "My mother died 3 years ago." Maeve heard her own voice, flat and steady, as if she were telling someone else's story. "Heart failure. My father left when I was 9. I do not have anyone." Luca said nothing. He only listened. "My mother fought for 3 years, Maeve went on, not knowing why she was saying these things to a mafia boss, yet unable to stop. "Hospital visits, medications, surgeries. I left my job to take care of her. And when she died, she left me $64,000 in medical bills." This time, Luca's jaw tightened slightly, but he still did not interrupt. "I have done every kind of job," Maeve said, a thin laugh slipping out with no joy in it. "Waitressing, cleaning, elder care. Anything that could earn money to pay the debt." Then the agency called and said there was a job that paid 4 times the usual rate. All I had to do was sign a confidentiality agreement. She looked straight into Luca's eyes. "I knew something was wrong. Money like that never comes without a price. But I did not have any other choice." Heavy silence poured down over the room. Maeve waited for contempt, waited for the pitying look she knew too well from wealthy people. But Luca only sat there, one finger tapping lightly against the desk, his black eyes never leaving her. "You did not ask what I do," he said finally. "You did not ask why secrecy was required. Why the pay was so high. Why there are guards everywhere." Maeve shook her head. "I do not need to know. I only need to take care of Noah." Something flashed in Luca's eyes. Too fast for Maeve to catch. He stood, came around the desk, and stopped directly in front of her. Close enough that she could feel the warmth rising from his body. Close enough to catch the scent of expensive cologne and the faint trace of coffee beneath it. "You are an honest woman," Luca said, his voice low. "That is rare." Maeve lifted her gaze to him, unsure whether it was praise or warning. "I am going to tell you a story," Luca said, and his eyes darkened like a sky before a storm. "About the woman in that photograph." He pointed toward the corner of the room where a portrait of a beautiful dark-haired woman hung on the wall. "About my wife. About Noah's mother. And about why I cannot look at my son." Luca turned his back to Maeve and walked to the window, staring out at the garden stretching beyond the glass. The morning sunlight fell across his face, sharpening every hard angle and deepening the shadows in his eyes. Maeve stayed still, waiting, feeling the weight of what was about to be spoken. Her name was Elena, Luca began, his voice like stone grinding over gravel. I met her when I was 25. She was beautiful, smart, from a good family. We married after a year. I thought I knew her. I thought I could trust her. He paused, his fingers drifting to the window frame. 2 years. We were married for 2 years. And I believed we were happy. I believed she loved me. Bitterness cut through his voice. Then I found out she had been meeting with my enemies. Passing information. Trading secrets for protection she thought she would need when she left me. Maeve felt her stomach tighten. I found out 3 days before Noah was born, Luca continued, and the pain in his voice was so raw it hurt to hear. One of my men intercepted messages. She had been planning to disappear. Take the child. Use him as leverage to drain me of everything I had built. He turned, and Maeve saw the wound on his face as clearly as if it were still bleeding. The night I confronted her, we fought. I yelled. She yelled. And then she collapsed. Luca's voice dropped to a whisper. She went into labor that night. The doctor said the stress triggered early delivery. Noah was born tiny and fragile but alive. He stopped, and Maeve realized she was holding her own breath. And Elena, Luca said, lifting a hand to his forehead as if trying to rub the memory away, she hemorrhaged. They could not save her. Silence fell over the room like a massive stone. I stood outside the delivery room, Luca said, his voice hollow, watching my wife die while my son was carried out. And the only thing I felt was not grief. It was rage. Rage that she dared to leave me that way. Rage that she betrayed me to her last breath. He looked down. And rage that when I look at Noah, all I can see is her face. Her lies. Maeve wanted to say something, anything, but she could not find the right words. Now do you understand? Luca asked, and his voice broke. Every time I look at him, I see Elena. I see the betrayal. I see the night she died. And I do not know how to stop seeing those things. Maeve looked at him, this powerful man standing in front of her, and she saw something no one else seemed to see. Not a monster. Not a cold mafia boss. Only a broken man. A man betrayed by the person he loved most. A man trying to survive in the wreckage of his own life. She stood slowly and walked toward him. Luca did not step back. He only watched her, as if she were something both precious and dangerous. Noah is not Elena, Maeve said, her voice gentle but unshakable. He is a part of you. Not a copy of anyone. And he needs his father. Luca swallowed, his throat working hard. I do not know how to be a father. My own father only taught me how to hold power and destroy my enemies. I have nothing to give him. You can learn, Maeve answered. Start now. Luca looked at her for a long moment, and something in his expression shifted. Like a door opening just a crack, letting in a thin sliver of light. Will you help me? He asked. And it was not an order. It was a plea. Maeve nodded, her heart beating faster. I will. And in that moment, standing in the morning light of his office, a promise was made. A new door opened. Neither of them knew what they had just stepped into. They only knew that from this moment on, their lives were tied together in ways they could not yet understand. Everything changed after that morning. Luca began coming to the playroom every evening at 7 o'clock, as steady as a clock. Meetings that used to stretch late into the night were cut short. Business trips were delayed. And for the first time in over a year, Noah's father was home. On the first night, Luca stood in the doorway, stiff and uncomfortable, as if he were a guest in his own house. Maeve had to wave him inside. Come in, she said gently. He wants to see you. Luca moved toward the play mat where Noah sat surrounded by colorful blocks. The boy looked up at his father with wide, curious eyes, as if trying to decide whether to trust this stranger. Sit down, Maeve said. Get on his level. Luca lowered himself to the floor, awkward in his expensive suit, and Noah stared at him. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Noah picked up a red block and held it out toward Luca. He wants you to take it, Maeve whispered. Luca reached out slowly, his large hand dwarfing the tiny block, and took it from his son. Noah smiled, a bright, pure smile that lit up his whole face. And Maeve saw Luca's eyes go soft in a way she had never seen before. The days that followed were filled with small, clumsy attempts. Luca learned how to stack blocks without knocking them over. Learned how to push toy cars across the floor and make engine sounds that made Noah giggle. Learned how not to hold Noah too tight when the boy climbed into his lap. Every step was slow, careful, filled with hesitation. But Luca did not give up. He tried. He failed. He tried again. And Maeve was there, guiding him through each moment, showing him how to be gentle, how to listen, how to love. One evening, while Noah played with stuffed animals, Luca turned to Maeve. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, his voice quiet. "You could have stayed silent. You could have just done your job and left me alone." Maeve looked at him, really looked at him, and she saw the question beneath the question. "Why do you care?" "Because everyone deserves a second chance," she said. "And because Noah deserves a father who loves him. Not a ghost who hides in the shadows." Luca watched her, and something in his expression cracked open. "You see me," he said, so soft she almost missed it. "No one else sees me. They see power. They see danger. They see the man who controls Northern Ontario. But you see me." Maeve felt her heart skip. "I see you," she whispered back. And in that moment, the air between them shifted. Something unspoken hung in the space, heavy and electric, pulling them closer even though neither of them moved. Noah toddles over, breaking the spell, and climbed into Maeve's lap. Luca watched them together, and the look in his eyes was so full of longing it made Maeve's chest ache. She did not know it yet, but she was falling. Falling for a man she should have feared. Falling into a world she did not understand. Falling with nothing to hold onto except the hope that maybe, just maybe, broken people could heal each other. 3 weeks passed, and the playroom became a place of transformation. Luca no longer stood in the doorway. He came in without hesitation, dropped to his knees beside Noah, and played. Really played. Building towers, racing cars, reading picture books in a low, steady voice that made Noah's eyes go wide with wonder. But the nights were different. The nights belonged to something neither of them dared name. It started small, a touch that lasted too long when their hands met reaching for the same toy. A look that held too much meaning when they caught each other's eyes across the room. A moment when Luca leaned close to help Maeve lift Noah, and she felt his breath warm against her neck, and her whole body went still. One night, after Noah was asleep, Maeve found herself in the kitchen making tea. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Luca in the doorway, still in his dress shirt and slacks, tie loosened, looking exhausted. "Could not sleep?" she asked. "Never can," Luca said, walking toward the counter. He reached for a mug from the shelf above her head, and for a single moment, his body was so close to hers she could feel the heat radiating from him. Their eyes met. Neither of them moved. The kettle whistled, breaking the moment. Maeve turned away fast, her hands shaking as she poured the hot water. They sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, steam rising from their cups, and the silence felt different than before. Not uncomfortable, intimate, like they were the only two people awake in the whole world. "Tell me about your mother," Luca said suddenly. Maeve looked up, surprised. "Why?" "Because I want to know you," he said simply. "I want to know the woman who brought my son back to me." Maeve felt tears prick her eyes, and she looked down at her tea. "She was the strongest person I ever knew," she began, her voice soft. "She worked 2 jobs to raise me alone. She never complained. She never gave up. Even when she got sick, even when the doctors said there was no hope, she kept fighting. For me, so I would not be alone." Luca reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The touch was gentle, warm, and it sent a shock through Maeve's entire body. "You are not alone anymore," he said, his voice steady and sure. Maeve looked into his eyes, and she saw the truth there. Saw that he meant it. And she realized with a jolt of fear and hope that she was not just helping him anymore. She was falling in love with him. They sat like that for a long time, hands touching, hearts opening, 2 broken people finding something they had both thought was lost forever. But neither of them knew that in the darkness outside, danger was already moving closer. And the peace they had found was about to be shattered. If this story is touching your heart, please tap like and share it with someone who loves emotional romance. And do not forget to subscribe so you do not miss what happens next, because things are about to change in ways no one expects. The shift happened so gradually that Maeve did not notice it at first. More guards appeared around the estate. Men in dark suits standing at every corner, watching, waiting. Luca's phone rang more often, pulling him away for hushed conversations behind closed doors. And Rose's face grew tighter with worry every time Maeve passed her in the hallway. On the 4th week, Maeve woke in the middle of the night to the sound of raised voices. She slipped out of bed and crept into the hallway, following the sound to Luca's office. The door was cracked open just enough for her to hear. "They're asking questions," a man's voice said. Deep, tense. "About the nanny." "What kind of questions?" Luca's voice, cold as ice. "They think she knows something. About Elena. About what Elena hid before she died." Silence. Heavy and thick. "How much do they know?" Luca asked. "Enough to be dangerous. The Caruso syndicate is offering money for information. They want her alive." Maeve's blood turned to ice. "Her? Why would anyone want her?" "Double the security," Luca said. "No one gets near her." "No one. And if they come anyway?" Another pause. Then Luca's voice, low and deadly. "Then they do not leave." Maeve backed away from the door, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She did not understand. She did not know anything about Elena. She had never even been in the woman's room. Why would a crime syndicate be asking about her? The next morning, Rosa pulled Maeve aside in the laundry room. "You need to be careful," the older woman said, her voice urgent. "Something is happening. Something bad." "What is it?" Maeve asked. "Why are there so many guards? Why is everyone acting strange?" Rosa looked around, making sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. "There are people who believe you found something in this house. Something Elena hid before she died. Evidence that could destroy powerful families." "But I did not find anything," Maeve said, panic rising in her voice. "I do not know anything." "It does not matter what is true," Rosa said, gripping Maeve's arm. "It matters what they believe. And if they believe you know something, they will come for you." Maeve felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. "What do I do?" "Stay close to Luca," Rosa said. "He will protect you. But child, I need you to understand something." Her eyes went sad. "Men like him protect what they love. But sometimes the cost of that protection is losing the very thing they're trying to save." That night, Maeve could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. She had come here to escape debt, to survive, to be invisible. But somehow, without meaning to, she had become visible in the most dangerous way possible. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Noah woke crying. Maeve went to him, lifted him from the crib, and carried him to the rocking chair. She began to sing the old Irish lullaby, the one her mother had taught her, the one that always calmed him. What she did not know was that in his office, Luca sat in the dark, listening through the hidden microphone. Listening to her voice. Listening to the sound of his son breathing. Listening and feeling his heart break because he knew what he was about to do. And he knew it would destroy them both. The next evening, Luca did not come to the playroom at 7 o'clock. Maeve waited with Noah, building blocks, reading stories, glancing at the door every few minutes. But he never appeared. At 8 o'clock, one of the guards knocked and told Maeve that Mr. Moretti wanted to see her in his office. Now, Maeve's stomach dropped. She picked up Noah and carried him with her, walking through the long hallways with a sense of dread growing heavier with every step. When she entered the office, Luca stood by the window, his back to her, his shoulders tense. He did not turn around when she walked in. "Sit," he said, his voice flat. Maeve sat, holding Noah in her lap, and waited. Luca finally turned, and the look on his face made her breath catch. He looked like a man who had not slept in days. Dark circles under his eyes. Jaw clenched. Every muscle in his body tight with control. "You are leaving," he said. No preamble. No explanation. Just 4 words that felt like a death sentence. "What?" Maeve whispered. "Tomorrow morning. I have arranged everything. A safe house 2 hours north, by a lake. New identity, money, security. Everything you need." "Why?" Maeve's voice broke. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you are in danger," Luca said, and for the first time, his control cracked. "The Caruso syndicate believes you know where Elena hid evidence that could destroy them. They have put a price on your head. Alive. They want you alive so they can use you to force my hand." Maeve felt tears spill down her cheeks. "But I do not know anything. I never found anything. It does not matter," Luca cut her off, his voice rising. "It does not matter what is true. What matters is what they believe. And as long as you are here, you are a target. As long as you are near me, you are in danger." "Then we fight," Maeve said, standing up. Noah clutched against her chest. "You have power. You have people. We can." "No." Luca's voice was absolute. He crossed the room and stood in front of her, so close she could see the pain in his eyes. I cannot fight them and protect you at the same time. I cannot keep you safe while you are here. The only way I can protect you is to make you disappear." "This is not protection," Maeve cried. "This is abandonment. You are pushing me away just like everyone else. Just like my father. Just like—" "Do not compare me to him," Luca said, his voice breaking. He reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I am not leaving you. I am saving you. There is a difference." "No," Maeve whispered. "There is not." They stood there, inches apart, both of them crying, and Maeve felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. "I love you," Luca said, and the words came out raw and desperate. "I love you more than I thought I could love anyone. More than I knew I was capable of. And that is why you had to go." Maeve closed her eyes, fresh tears streaming down her face. "If you love me, then let me stay. Let me fight beside you. Do not send me away. I cannot watch you die," Luca whispered. "I lost Elena. I cannot lose you too." "You are not losing me to death," Maeve said, opening her eyes and looking straight into his. "You are losing me to fear." Luca flinched as if she had struck him. He stepped back, his hands dropping to his sides, and the distance between them felt like an ocean. "Tomorrow morning," he said, his voice empty now. 6 a.m. Be ready." Then he turned and walked out of his own office, leaving Maeve standing there with Noah in her arms and a broken heart in her chest. The last night was the longest night of Maeve's life. She did not sleep. She could not. She lay in bed holding Noah close, breathing in his baby smell, memorizing the weight of him in her arms, knowing that tomorrow she would wake up and everything would be gone. At 2 o'clock in the morning, she could not stand it anymore. She got up, wrapped Noah in a blanket, and carried him to the playroom one last time. She sat in the rocking chair by the window and looked out at the dark garden, at the world she was about to leave behind. Then she began to sing. The Irish lullaby her mother had taught her. The one she had sung 100 times in this room. The one that had brought Luca to her in the first place. She sang even though her voice broke. She sang even though tears ran down her face. She sang because it was the only thing she had left. What Maeve did not know was that across the house, in his office, Luca sat in the dark with his head in his hands, listening to every word through the hidden microphone. Listening to her cry. Listening to his son breathe. Listening and feeling his heart rip apart because he knew this was the last time he would hear her voice like this. When the song ended, silence filled the playroom. Maeve looked down at Noah, who had fallen asleep in her arms, and she whispered, "I am so sorry, little one. I am sorry I could not stay. I am sorry I could not protect you better. I am sorry I had to leave you." She kissed his forehead, soft and gentle, and fresh tears fell onto his sleeping face. In his office, Luca stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the mansion, at the playroom window where he knew Maeve was sitting, and he pressed his hand against the glass as if he could reach her across the distance. "I am sorry," he whispered into the empty room. "I am so sorry." At 6 o'clock in the morning, a black car waited in the driveway. Maeve stood beside it with a single suitcase in her hand and Noah in her arms. Rosa was there, crying openly, holding Maeve's free hand and refusing to let go. "You take care of yourself, child," Rosa said through her tears. "You are strong, stronger than you know. You will survive this." Maeve nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She looked up at the mansion, at the window of Luca's office, and she saw him standing there. Just a shadow behind the glass. Watching her leave, letting her go. Maeve lifted her hand. A silent goodbye. A promise she would never forget. Luca did not lift his hand back. He only stood there, motionless as stone. And Maeve understood. If he moved, he would break. If he raised his hand, he would run down and pull her back. So he stayed still, watching her go, destroying himself from the inside. The driver opened the car door. Maeve handed Noah to Rosa for one last hug, then took him back and climbed into the car. The door closed. The engine started, and as the car rolled forward, Maeve did not look back. She could not. She held Noah close to her chest, stared straight ahead, and let the tears fall freely. Behind her, the mansion grew smaller, and the man she loved vanished from sight. But not from her heart. Not ever. The safe house sat on the edge of a quiet lake, surrounded by tall pine trees and silence. It was beautiful in a lonely way. White walls, large windows, a dock that stretched out over the water. Paradise. Anyone else would have called it paradise. But to Maeve, it was a prison. The first week passed in a blur. She went through the motions. Fed Noah, changed him, played with him, but her heart was not in it. Her heart was somewhere else, with someone else, and every moment felt hollow without him. At night, after Noah was asleep, Maeve would sit by the window and stare out at the black water. She would think about Luca. Wonder if he was safe. Wonder if he thought about her. Wonder if he regretted sending her away. Every few days, her phone would buzz with a message. Just one word. Safe. That was all. No, I miss you. No, I love you. Just confirmation that he was still alive. Maeve would read that single word over and over, touching the screen as if she could reach him through the cold letters. She never replied. She did not know what to say. The days turned into weeks. Noah began to change, to grow. He said new words. Duck, when he saw the birds on the lake. Up, when he wanted to be carried. Mama, when he looked at Maeve. But he never said, Papa. Because Papa was not there. One morning, 3 weeks after they arrived, Maeve was making breakfast when Noah toddled up to her, holding his favorite stuffed bear. He looked up at her with those dark eyes, so much like his father's, and said 2 words that broke her completely. Papa come? Maeve dropped the spoon. She sank to her knees and pulled Noah into her arms, sobbing into his soft hair. I do not know, sweetheart, she whispered. I do not know if Papa is coming. Noah patted her face with his small hand, trying to comfort her, and that only made Maeve cry harder. That night, after Noah was asleep, Maeve made a decision. She walked to the toy chest in the corner of the room, the one they had brought from the mansion, and she opened it. Inside were Noah's stuffed animals, his blankets, his favorite toys. And tucked in the bottom, wrapped in an old baby blanket, was something Maeve had never noticed before. A USB drive. Maeve pulled it out, her hands shaking, and stared at it. It was small, black, unmarked. She had no idea how long it had been there or who had put it there. But something told her it was important. She walked to her laptop, plugged in the drive, and waited as the files loaded. What she saw made her blood run cold. Documents, photos, recordings, evidence of corruption, money laundering, illegal dealings involving the Caruso syndicate and half a dozen other crime families. Alina's handwriting was all over the notes. Dates, names, locations. Everything. This was what they were looking for. This was why the Caruso syndicate wanted her. They thought she had found it. And now, she had. Maeve's heart pounded. She unplugged the drive and held it in her hand, feeling the weight of it. This tiny piece of plastic was worth millions. It could destroy empires. It could end wars. It could save lives. Or it could get her killed. She looked at Noah sleeping peacefully in his crib, and she knew what she had to do. She picked up her phone and typed a message to the only number saved in it. The number Luca had given her. 4 words. I found it. Come. Then she hit send and waited. Luca arrived before dawn. Maeve heard the car pull up, heard the door close, heard footsteps on the gravel path. She stood by the window, heart racing, and watched him approach the house. He looked terrible. Thinner than she remembered. Dark circles under his eyes. Beard grown out, unkempt. He moved like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Maeve opened the door before he could knock. They stood there, staring at each other, neither of them speaking. All the words they had saved up, all the things they wanted to say, stuck in their throats. Then Luca stepped forward and pulled her into his arms. He held her so tight she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair, his whole body shaking. I am sorry, he whispered, his voice breaking. I am so sorry. I thought I was protecting you. I thought sending you away was the only way to keep you safe. But all I did was hurt us both. Maeve wrapped her arms around him and held on. You are here now, she whispered back. That is what matters. They stood like that for a long time, 2 broken people clinging to each other, trying to piece themselves back together. Finally, Maeve pulled back and led him inside. Noah was still asleep in his crib, and Luca walked over slowly, looking down at his son with eyes full of longing and regret. He asked for you, Maeve said softly. Every day, he asks when Papa is coming. Luca closed his eyes, pain written all over his face. I have missed him so much. I have missed you both so much. Then stay, Maeve said. Do not leave again. Luca turned to look at her. I want to. But the Caruso syndicate is about to be destroyed, Maeve said. She pulled the USB drive from her pocket and held it up. Elena hid this in Noah's toy chest. It has been there the whole time. Evidence of everything. Enough to take them all down. Luca stared at the drive, his expression shifting from shock to understanding to something else. "Hope, where did you find it?" he asked. "In the toy chest we brought here. I found it yesterday." Maeve placed the drive in his hand. "This is what they were looking for. This is why they wanted me." Luca looked at the drive, then at Maeve, then at Noah sleeping peacefully. "Do you know what this means?" he asked quietly. "It means the threat is over," Maeve said. "It means we can end this." Luca nodded slowly. "I need to take this to the authorities. The right people. People who can use it to dismantle the entire syndicate." "Then do it," Maeve said. "But come back. Promise me you will come back." Luca pulled her close again and kissed her forehead. "I promise. I am never leaving you again. Not for anything." He spent the rest of the day at the safe house, playing with Noah, holding Maeve, making up for the weeks they had lost. And when the sun set, he prepared to leave. 3 days, he said, standing in the doorway. "Give me 3 days to end this. And then we start over. All of us. Together." Maeve nodded, tears in her eyes. 3 days. Luca kissed her, deep and desperate, as if trying to pour every unspoken word into that single moment. Then he left. And Maeve stood at the window, watching the taillights disappear into the darkness, praying that he would keep his promise. 3 days felt like 3 years. Maeve could not eat, could not sleep. She paced the house, checking her phone every few minutes, waiting for a message, a call, anything. On the morning of the 3rd day, her phone rang. Maeve grabbed it so fast she nearly dropped it. "It is done," Luca's voice came through, rough with exhaustion but alive. "The Caruso syndicate is finished. The evidence was enough. They have all been arrested. It is over, Maeve. It is finally over." Maeve sank into a chair, relief flooding through her so strong she felt dizzy. "Are you safe?" "I am safe. And I am coming home. I will be there by tonight." "Tonight?" "Tonight," Luca confirmed. "Pack your things. We are leaving that safe house. I am taking you and Noah back to the estate. Where you belong." Maeve could not stop the tears that spilled down her cheeks. "Okay," she whispered. "We will be ready." That evening, as the sun set over the lake, a car pulled up to the safe house. Maeve stood on the porch with Noah in her arms, and when Luca stepped out, her heart almost stopped. He looked different, lighter, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He walked toward them, and when he reached them, he dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around both of them. "I am home," he whispered. "I am finally home." Noah squealed with delight and threw his arms around his father's neck. "Papa, Papa home." Luca laughed, a real, genuine laugh, and lifted Noah into the air. "Yes, little one. Papa is home, and I am never leaving again." He looked at Maeve, and the love in his eyes was so clear, so pure, it took her breath away. "Come here," he said softly. Maeve stepped forward, and Luca wrapped his free arm around her, pulling her close. They stood there together, the three of them, a family reunited, as the last light of the day faded into night. "I need to tell you something," Luca said, his voice serious now. He set Noah down and reached into his pocket. When he pulled his hand back out, he was holding a small velvet box. Maeve's breath caught. Luca opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring. "I bought this the day after you left," he said. "I knew I had made a mistake. I knew I loved you. And I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." He took her hand. "Maeve O'Connor, will you marry me? Will you stay with me and Noah? Will you be my family?" Maeve could not speak. She could only nod, tears streaming down her face, as Luca slipped the ring onto her finger. "Yes," she finally whispered. "Yes, I will." Luca stood and kissed her, and it felt like coming home after being lost for a lifetime. Noah clapped his hands, not fully understanding but knowing something good was happening. "Mama, Papa." They laughed through their tears, holding each other, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. 6 months later, they were married in the garden of the estate. It was a small ceremony, just Rosa, a few trusted friends, and Noah toddling around in a tiny suit that made him look impossibly adorable. Maeve wore a simple white dress, no veil, no elaborate decorations. She did not need them. All she needed was Luca standing at the end of the aisle, looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. They exchanged vows under a canopy of flowers, and Rosa cried through the entire ceremony, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief and whispering prayers in Italian. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Luca pulled Maeve close and kissed her with all the love, all the pain, all the hope they had carried through the darkness. Noah, sitting in Rose's lap, clapped and shouted, "Papa! Mama," and everyone laughed. That night, after the guests had gone and Noah was tucked into bed, Luca led Maeve to the playroom. He had something to show her. "I want you to see this," he said, walking to the toy chest in the corner. He opened it and pulled out a small black device. "The microphone. I am destroying it," Luca said. "I should have done this a long time ago. I should never have listened to you without your knowledge. It was wrong." Maeve took the device from his hand and looked at it. Then she smiled. "Wait," she said. Luca frowned. "What?" Maeve walked to the rocking chair, sat down, and motioned for Luca to come closer. He did, kneeling in front of her. "I need to tell you something," Maeve said. "I knew about the microphone." Luca's eyes went wide. "What?" "I found it 3 weeks after I started working here," Maeve said. "I was cleaning the toy chest, and I saw it. I knew what it was." "Why did you not say anything?" Luca asked, his voice full of confusion. "Because I understood why you did it," Maeve said, reaching out to touch his face. "You were afraid. You were broken. You did not trust anyone. And I knew that if I confronted you, you would shut me out completely." She smiled. "So I sang. Every night at 3 a.m. when Noah woke up, I sang. Not just for him. For you." Luca stared at her, and tears filled his eyes. "You knew," he whispered. "You knew I was listening, and you sang anyway." "I sang because I wanted you to hear," Maeve said. "I wanted you to know that you were not alone. That someone saw you. That someone cared." Luca broke. He buried his face in her lap and sobbed, his whole body shaking with the force of it. Maeve ran her fingers through his hair, holding him, letting him release all the pain he had carried for so long. "You saved me," Luca whispered. "You saved me, and I did not even know I needed saving." "We saved each other," Maeve said. "That is what love does." They sat like that for a long time, two souls who had found each other in the darkness and chosen to hold on. Later, they went to their bedroom, and Luca held Maeve in his arms, his face buried in her hair. "I love you," he said. "I will spend the rest of my life showing you how much." "I love you too," Maeve whispered back. "And I will never leave." As they drifted off to sleep, Maeve thought about the journey that had brought them here. The pain, the loss, the fear. But also the hope, the healing, the love. She had come to this house invisible, broken, drowning in debt and loneliness. And she had found a family. A home. A man who saw her when no one else did. She thought about the lullaby she had sung 100 times in the playroom. The song that had brought them together. The song that had healed a broken man and given a little boy his father back. And she knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm after that. Luca stepped back from the most dangerous parts of his business, delegating more, trusting more, choosing to be present instead of powerful. He came home every evening at 6 o'clock, played with Noah until bedtime, and spent the nights with Maeve, talking, laughing, planning the future. Noah grew into a bright, joyful child. He said full sentences now. "Papa, look," when he built a tower. "Mama, read," when he wanted a story. He had his father's dark eyes and his mother's gentle heart, and he was loved beyond measure. Rosa retired but stayed in a small cottage on the estate, close enough to visit every day and spoil Noah with cookies and stories. She watched Maeve and Luca together and smiled, seeing the transformation she had prayed for. One evening, when Noah was 3 years old, Maeve found Luca in the playroom, sitting in the old rocking chair, just staring at the space where everything had begun. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sitting down beside him. "That night," Luca said. "The night I heard you sing for the first time. I was in my office, drowning in guilt and anger, convinced I would never feel anything good again. And then I heard your voice through the microphone." He turned to look at her. "You sounded so sad, Maeve. Like you were singing not just for Noah, but for yourself. Like you needed the comfort as much as he did." Maeve felt tears prick her eyes. "I was sad. I felt invisible. Like I did not matter to anyone." "You mattered to me," Luca said, reaching for her hand. "From that very first night, you mattered to me. I just did not know how to tell you." "You are telling me now," Maeve said, squeezing his hand. "And that is all I need." Luca stood and pulled her to her feet. "Dance with me," he said. "There is no music," Maeve laughed. "Then sing," Luca said. "Sing the lullaby." Maeve smiled, wrapped her arms around his neck, and began to sing. The Irish lullaby her mother had taught her. The song that had changed everything. The song that had brought a broken man back to life. They swayed slowly in the playroom, holding each other, and the world outside disappeared. It was just them. Just this moment. Just this love. Noah appeared in the doorway, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Mama? Papa?" They stopped and turned, and Luca scooped him up, pulling him into the embrace. The three of them stood together, wrapped in each other's arms, and Maeve felt her heart overflow. This was home. This was family. This was everything she had ever wanted and thought she would never have. "I love you," Luca whispered into her hair. "I love you too," Maeve whispered back. And Noah, nestled between them, said, "Love you, Mama. Love you, Papa." In that moment, everything was perfect. Years passed. Noah grew into a smart, kind boy who loved books and building things. Luca became a legitimate businessman, using his power to help his community instead of control it. And Maeve, the once invisible nanny, became the heart of a family that had been broken but was now whole. One night, when Noah was 7, he asked Maeve a question. "Mama, how did you and Papa meet?" Maeve and Luca exchanged a look. They had talked about this moment, about what they would tell him when he was old enough to ask. "We met when you were very little," Maeve said, sitting down beside him on the bed. "You were just a baby, and you needed someone to take care of you. And Mama came," Luca added, sitting on the other side. "She came and she sang to you. Beautiful songs that made you feel safe. Did you fall in love?" Noah asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. Maeve smiled. "Yes, but it took time. Your papa was very sad back then. He had lost someone important, and he did not know how to be happy again." "But you helped him," Noah said. "She did," Luca said, looking at Maeve with so much love it made her heart ache. "She helped me remember how to feel. How to love. How to be a father. And now we are a family," Noah said, smiling. "Now we are a family," Maeve agreed, pulling him into a hug. After Noah fell asleep, Maeve and Luca stood in the doorway, watching him breathe. "Do you ever regret it?" Luca asked. "Coming here? Staying with me?" Maeve turned to him. "Never. Not for 1 second. Even with everything that happened? The danger? The separation? Even with all of that," Maeve said. "Because it brought me here. To you. To Noah. To a life I never thought I could have." Luca pulled her close. "You gave me everything, Maeve. You gave me my son. You gave me a reason to be better. You gave me a future. And you gave me a home," Maeve said. "You saw me when I was invisible. You chose me when I had nothing to offer. You loved me when I did not think I was worth loving." They stood together in the quiet hallway, holding each other, and Maeve thought about how far they had come. From that first night at 3 a.m., when she sang in the darkness, not knowing anyone was listening, to this moment, years later, when they had built something beautiful from the broken pieces of their lives. She thought about the hidden microphone, the symbol of surveillance that had become a symbol of connection. She thought about the lullaby that had saved them both. And she thought about the power of being seen, of being known, of being loved. "Thank you," Luca whispered. "For what?" Maeve asked. "For singing," he said. "For staying. For choosing me." Maeve smiled and kissed him. "I would choose you 1,000 times over. In every lifetime. In every world. I would always choose you." And as they walked together to their bedroom, hand in hand, Maeve knew that this was the truth. That love was not about perfection. It was about choosing each other, again and again, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. That night, before they fell asleep, Luca asked her to sing the old Irish lullaby, the one that had started it all. And Maeve sang, her voice soft and warm in the darkness, wrapping around them like a blanket. Luca held her close, his eyes closed, his heart full. And in the playroom down the hall, the toy chest sat empty now, the microphone long destroyed. But the memory of what it had witnessed remained. The memory of a broken man learning to love again. The memory of an invisible woman finding her place in the world. The memory of a family built on whispers in the dark. This story teaches us that true love is not about perfection. It is about seeing each other fully, wounds and all, and choosing to stay anyway. It is about being brave enough to be vulnerable, to trust, to believe that broken people can heal together. It reminds us that sometimes the people who need love the most are the ones who push it away the hardest. And that patience, understanding, and unconditional acceptance can transform even the coldest heart. Maeve and Luca's journey shows us that everyone deserves to be seen, to be heard, to matter. And that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply show up, again and again, for the people we love. If this story touched your heart, Please tap like and share it with someone who loves emotional romance. Leave a comment below and tell us what you felt. Have you ever felt invisible like Maeve? Have you ever loved someone who was afraid to let you in? We want to hear your story. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story. We have more emotional journeys coming that will move you, inspire you, and remind you of the power of love. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. May you find someone who sees you the way Luca saw Maeve. And may you have the courage to sing your song, even in the darkness, trusting that someone is listening. Goodbye for now. And remember, you are never truly invisible. Someone sees you. Someone hears you. Someone loves you.